Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Chandres. You can call me Q. I am the Managing Director for American Immigration Group, a regional center headquartered in New York. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the reauthorization. We're going to talk about the industry, about EB-5, and also we want to talk to you about why it is a great time to do EB-5 right now. So there is a couple of things that we're going to be discussing here. I have Simone here with Williams Global Law. She is an immigration attorney with quite a great experience in EB-5. She's our guest here today, and she's going to be talking to you about legal side of the reauthorization. So I think we're going to start with Simone basically just telling us a little bit about the reauthorization that is coming up on June 30th of this year. Why is it different from the other reauthorizations that we have had before? And why is it good for an investor to actually file their application now before that reauthorization comes?
Thank you, Q. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. Just a little background about myself. My name is Simone Williams. I run a international and immigration law firm based in Washington, D.C. I've been doing this representing investors who work on EB-5 applications for more than 15 years. And I've worked with over hundreds of investors. Everyone has been approved. And so I'm very experienced with commenting today on the reauthorization bill, as well as guiding our clients to the best possible method in terms of getting their EB-5 application filed and approved. So as Q mentioned, the EB-5 program, as some already know who are on the call or who are not on the call, allows foreign investors to invest in projects in the United States and receive green cards, which means permanent residency in return. The idea is to encourage investment and job creation in the United States. And the EB-5 program was established in the 1990s and has facilitated tens of billions of dollars in capital investments from foreign investors in the United States to support American jobs. So it's been a program that has been long recognized, well established in the US. Every time period where it actually expires. And since 1990, it has been reauthorized. So we really do anticipate that the program will be reauthorized again in June 30th. June 30th, it's set to expire. And so there has been a new bill recognized in the Senate to extend the program again. And so that's what's going on right now with the EB-5 program. It's set to expire on June 30th of this year. And there's been a new bill that has been introduced by two senators to extend the EB-5 program again. And in terms of the details of the extension and the policies and what the bill would do, I'm not going to get into that right now. But what I'm really want to focus on is one, why a client should still seek, if they're interested in the EB-5 program, they should try to file their applications, get the process started, just to ensure that their applications are timely filed in the event that the bill is delayed or that there's some changes. Right now, the program is rather kind to investors, and there's a lot of methods in which you can get your source of funds and your investment capital. So to ensure that your filing goes under the rules as of June 30th, we are really recommending that clients file their applications before the June 30th deadline that is set to expire the program, and then potentially a new bill will reauthorize the program and maybe change some of the requirements.
Right. So you touched upon the source of funds, Simone. We as a regional center do offer investors a lot of options when it comes to, just before the program expires, just before reauthorization. A lot of people want to put their application in, want to be in. So we do offer them options to partially fund, to also, give a time frame to fund the rest of the funds so they can get their application in.
Mhm.
So we do offer those options. Are those options acceptable? Like if, let's say, an investor would be to fund partial funding, like part of their 900,000, if an investor would be to put that in, provide proof that there is the other amount, the rest of the amount is available, or in one way or another, would that be acceptable for USAS? Could you file their petition with that?
Okay, that's a great question. So a lot of investors say, look, there's some challenges with transfer. They can't get all of their funds in time to file. And we're looking at June 30th. So this is about a month, approximately a little bit over a month left to do this. So my answer would be, is that good thing is if you invest a partial amount of the investment and it's transferred to the regional center, to the investment projects, you would still be able to file because you're showing a good faith transfer to the project, and we can still explain your source of funds even if you haven't been able to transfer the full investment amount. Now, in terms of how much money can I transfer now, the requirement right now is $900,000 US. And that is quite significant. The investment amount did increase in 2019 from 500 to 900. So in terms of being able to transfer the full investment amount, and you don't have that at this moment, but you can explain how you're able to do that. You would have to work with Q and her team and decide how much could you actually invest at this time, and when you would be able to transfer the full investment amount. As long as you are able to transfer the full investment amount in a reasonable amount of time, again, Q and her team will be able to work with you and discuss the options and the timeline. That's something individual depending on your circumstances. And that's something that I also work with Q to kind of confirm, okay, this is the amount of time that will work for the investor and for the filing. Then we will able to get the application file. But that, as I mentioned before, the main thing is that trying to get your file in before the deadline to make sure you're preserved under the old rules that are very kind to investors. We understand what the rules are now. And so in terms of being able to preserve your filing under the new rules before June 30th, that's why we would recommend that you file. In addition, we likely will see that it's extended, but that being said, if there's any delays, if the program stops for some time period, you just want to be able to ensure that if you're interested in getting the fastest way to get a green card in the United States through this program, an investment that you will get the return back in a number of years, but the program allows you and your spouse and your children under the age of 21 to get permanent residency in the US. The fastest way, this would be the way to do it. And if you're very interested in doing this, I would recommend doing it sooner rather than later, talking to Q immediately, figuring out a strategy, talking to me immediately, really figuring out a strategy so we can get your application filed before the 30th of June.
Thank you, Simone. So just a simple explanation here. So your application, your EB-5 application has two sides of it. So there is the project side, which a regional center manages and provides. And then there is your individual side, which includes your personal information, your source of funds, and all of that. So this is a teamwork, really. The regional center will provide everything necessary for the project. It will make sure the project is approved, creates the necessary jobs, all of that. And the immigration attorney, Simone in this case, would be the one who will guide you and will work with you through your source of funds and through your individual immigration applications. Now, we have always seen a surge of investors just before any type of reauthorization. Frankly speaking, in terms of citizenship by investment programs out there, EB-5 is quite straightforward, and it is the most favorable out there. So there is always that fear with potential investors that it might change, it might become more difficult, it might become, a little bit more extensive, and so on and so forth. So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of investors do rush to go in before a reauthorization. But this reauthorization in particular, Simone, it seems to be different because it is raising a lot more concerns and a lot more rush from investors to get in during this time. So I know before the reauthorization, the EB-5 bill was attached to the lending bill when it went to Congress. So when they approved, the government's spending and lending limits, they approved EB-5 with it. This time it's been separated from that bill, and they want to focus on it directly. Being being as that, do you expect to see major changes, or do you expect to just see a permanent reauthorization of the program, and that's it? What are your thoughts on this? Because this particular element seems to have people really rushing to get in, really trying to do this as soon as possible. And it generated a lot of press as well as to what the changes could be, which when you look into the bills that were introduced or suggested, basically it's not the case. But I just want to get your opinion. What do you expect is going to happen? Your professional opinion.
So the thing is, with the new bill, it's going to require more oversight and more strict requirements for the regional center, in addition to the investors, because because they're trying to allow only good faith investors to invest. There's an issue with fraud. They want to make sure that there isn't as many fraudulent projects out there. So it's really trying to improve accountability and transparency. And then therefore, there are going to be more stringent requirements on the investors and the projects to be able to allow participation in the program, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, it also, because of the stricter guidelines and requirements that would be put in place, it would give investors just more steps that they need to comply with in order to participate in this program.
Correct. All right. Well, thank you for that. That is basically our opinion as well. And there's another reason why it's a good time to invest right now, besides the reauthorization. And that's the availability of a project. See, after the 2019 changes, where the investment amount went up, also the TEA guidelines changed. So just to give you a background, a TEA is a targeted employment area. It's an area where the unemployment rate is 150% of the national average. So those guidelines changed, like what could be counted as a TA or how many census tracts could go into claiming or a project claiming to be a TEA changed. So a lot of projects that had an exemplar approval or an I-94 is an approval from USCIS for the project itself. And that kind of gives a sense of security to investors that they would not be denied because of the project. So a lot of projects that have had these two, they kind of lost the TEA. So they were at the $1.8 million price point. So there is a scarcity in the market for projects that are mature, under construction, that have created jobs, that are TEAs and have the exemplar approval. We are lucky that both our projects, are TEAs, and both our projects basically have the exemplar approval. So these projects, especially the mature projects, are actually going through their end of life stages, where they're really looking to close the offerings. So a lot of investors want to be in these projects, because then you're going to be faced with new projects, no construction, no exemplar approval, and so on and so forth. So that's another reason why people rush, especially now. Why now? Basically, they rush because those projects are going through their end cycle. So it is always good to be into a mature project. There is much less risk. There is much less unknowns on the project. So investors do prefer that. So that's
Well, yeah, that's in terms of me recommending projects to investors from an immigration perspective, from a stability perspective. I would recommend a project such as yours just because of, like you said, the establishment, the fact that the track record of your project with approvals with investors, the fact that your current project does satisfy all the requirements for the TEA and as it is, and in the future, the fact that your project will still meet more stringent requirements should things change with the reauthorization, but it does meet those requirements now. And the track record, again, having approvals, having consistency, being in the market, and having investors that could attest to their approvals and going through the system, and that your projects are being completed, the real estate, you can see the real estate that you're on track and have been on track. Those are all parameters that, as I guide my investors, I am only talking to them from an immigration perspective. And again, we want them to get their green card. But we look at those types of projects such as yours that have these strong indicators that there will be success for them at the end of the road. As you mentioned, it's very important that you work with projects that are like that.
Correct. And these projects really tend to close very soon. So that is another reason why investors tend to rush and get into these projects. And again, we do offer a variety of options for investors to come in, but we do offer a lot of assistance and options depending on your particular situation. There's countries that have also a set amount of money that they can send out. So we are sensitive to all of those. And we try to offer as many options as possible for investors to make this something that is easy for them to do. Now,
well, that's a good thing because as I work with other projects and other EB-5, they're limited in terms of what they will accept, whether they're working with the investors to do a partial investment amount. I think that's a very important key because some projects want the full investment amount upfront. And the fact that you're able to work with them and kind of depending on their particular situation, when they could actually transfer the funds, it's not, it's not super set. It's, you're able to work with them, which we can. And as an attorney, I could also say, look, this is guide the investor, guide the project to make sure that everyone is investing in time and getting their applications in time, which is the most important thing.
That is the most important part of this whole thing. Getting your application in, you're basically in the program. So no matter what happens, you're in.
Yes.
Now, we as a regional center also have created an option for investors when they invest now during this time before the reauthorization. We basically are keeping the money in the escrow account so that in case things change and it's not something that the investor wants to continue to do, or is something that the investor doesn't feel comfortable with anymore, we can return all their funds to them, by the time that the reauthorization happens. So that's another added, security or comfort level that we are offering to our investors. Now, Simone, I have one more question for you, and then I think we're going to turn this over to Olu to talk a little bit about the market. But I have one more question for you. Could you please tell me, in terms of a timeline to submit a I-526 application? See, now I know that in terms of the project, I have everything ready. I have the approval. Everything is done. In terms of an investor, realistically speaking, what has been historically the timeline that, or the time that it took an investor to complete their source of funds and file a proper I-526 application?
So there's a few things at stake. Every investor is different, unfortunately. We could say approximate, but I think I mentioned the challenges of transferring the funds. I think that is normally the main hiccup, the main issue that because of the transfer restrictions in a lot of the different countries in Africa. And so once we kind of get a hold of how the funds will be transferred to the project, that's the main thing. And that could take, several weeks. hopefully there is a clear sense of where the money, where the account, the funds are actually coming from. But what we have to do is work with the investor to confirm where their source of money is coming from, that it could be easily traced from the account in which they're sending their funds from, and that everything is lawfully sourced. And that is something depending on the investor, how clear the funds are, if the money is in a bank account, or that they came from income or proceeds from a real estate sale. Maybe that is a fairly easy process for them and it won't take too much time. But let's say that they gave me everything from the time, as soon as I get all the documents in that I've requested, we can turn everything around in a week or week to 2 weeks, really putting everything together. And they have to still sign the forms, the original forms, and send them back to me. But we could get, as soon as we get all of that done, we can file it within one to 2 weeks from the date of getting all of the documents and everything that we've requested, including the signed forms.
Perfect. So it's not, okay. So
It's not a long time from the point of them actually getting us the documents. Now, compiling all the information on their side and working out the strategy as we discussed, making sure that, if they're only able to invest a partial amount, that we get a good timeline in place and certain agreements are signed, et cetera, that can sometimes take a little bit longer, but it's really about how fast the investor's willingness to really get this in ASAP. We can get everything done within 4 weeks, but he has to be working with me, getting that timeline in place, getting all the documents to me by email. Everything can be done electronically except for the original forms from the immigration is signed. So you will be signing everything on your end with the project, and you can email those signature documents back to me and the project, and I can use that as part of the filing. But the only original forms, the original documents we will need is the signed immigration form. So as soon as we get that data from you, your address, your name, your passport, all of that stuff, you can prepare those forms, get that to you, get that signed, put everything together and actually file it. We'll have a full completed application as long as we're providing the evidence where your money is sourced from and how it will be transferred into the US. So
if someone wanting to do this now before the reauthorization, or if someone was looking into a timeline and said, all right, so this is what you send. You can, if you can't transfer the entire funds, if all your funds are not liquid at the moment, you can transfer part of it. We can still do the filing. We'll work with you on your timelines, and then they could still be on time to actually file their I-526 petition through, right?
That's correct.
Right.
And we really want to emphasize that, this is about you. As long as you give us the forms and the documents in time, we can file it. In terms of, like, for instance, so we'll talk about initiating the process. You will set up a quick call with me. We'll do a complimentary call, 20 minutes, that's it. If you're interested in proceeding, we'll put, you fill out a questionnaire, and then we determine your ability. And I think there's a questionnaire by your team as well, right, Q?
A suitability questionnaire. And we also do a basic background check on the investor. It doesn't take us long. There's a 1 to 2 business day turnaround.
Okay.
We set them against the Interpol and against the Office for Financial Crimes.
Yes.
These are the only 2 places where we check on the background. And the suitability questionnaire, as per Securities and Exchange Commission requirements, we need to make sure that they are a suitable investor.
Right.
So yeah, that is, everything is sent to you as well. So it is really a team effort to file an I-526 petition and to file an EB-5, a successful EB-5 petition.
So once the investors approved, the due diligence on our firm's end and on Q's project, and then you're approved, then you go through the system. We'll send you a link where you're going to complete information about yourself, and we're going to ask you, we'll have a list of documents that we're going to ask you to send to us. And as long as you send that to us in a very timely manner, have everything sent so we could review it and get everything in order, we can really process your case quite quickly. It's really depending on the investor sending us all of the information and documents once they're approved on our side and on AIG's side.
This is good to know. It's a good thing that the investors basically are able, realistically speaking, are able to go into a good project, into a mature project, and be able to file their petition before the reauthorization on June 30th. Just to reiterate again, we do have two projects as American Immigration Group that are in the market right now. Both these projects are very good investment opportunities. They are in great locations. They are TEAs. They have exemplar approval. The job creation is quite impressive in both of them. So we are out there. There's a lot of inquiries that we're receiving, and one of them might actually close soon. We might close that offering soon. So they are out there. They are good investment opportunities, and they do have exemplar approvals, which kind of mitigates the risk of you being denied your green card because of the project. So, Olu, I do want to turn this over to you now. I want to ask you about the market that you're servicing. Olu is in Nigeria, and he represents both our projects over there. So talk to us a little bit about the market, about your investors, about the level of inquiries that you're getting, and also what are some challenges that your investors face in terms of maybe transferring the money or providing documentation for the source of funds, and how you can help them with these challenges.
Thank you very much for this, Quentin. My name is Ido Olumide. I represent Global Citizenship Services here in Nigeria. Global Citizenship Services is a combination of attorneys and agents and CBI experts. I represent AIG here in Nigeria, and their two projects are very, very interesting. Most of my clients prefer the New York project because they know it has the government input, so they are fine with the New York project. And so the increment is really the fee increment is really not the problem. The problem is the time waiting from ISI to be authorized, to be granted. So I try to tell them that fine, it's 18 months, 24 months. If you can just put the money in now, the time start rolling in. You don't have to wait for the reauthorization. The best time to do is right now. And if you're going to do right now, since you prefer the New York project, you should make haste and let's do it now. They're thinking, and they're going to move forward before the end of June. By the grace of God, like we normally say here in Nigeria, they're going to move forward. The problem we are having is the source of funding, but we are having a way around it. And moving funds is kind of difficult from Nigeria here. But from experience, we know how to help clients move their money legitimately from Nigeria here to US. There's a way we do it. I don't want to give it out just like that. There's a way we do it, and it has helped our clients. They don't have to there's no trouble. It's legitimate. People pay Naira here. If our client pays Naira here, the people that need Naira, they pay dollar into our client's account, which makes it very, very easier for everybody. And the problem of the source of fund with our clients is that sometimes they don't have some documentations. Sometimes because they are Nigeria, people can actually overlook some things. If you're a big man, you can overlook it. And once they demand it, you can decide to now pay everything at once. So paying everything at once takes time, but we are moving fast with it. We are moving fast because of the reauthorization deadline. We want to bring in as much people so that if by chance, if the reauthorization doesn't go through, then we would have put more people in the kitty before then.
Correct. I mean, honestly, I don't think any of us is of the opinion that the reauthorization is not going to happen or the program is going to be canceled. But there might be changes. So it's always good to kind of be in with what we already know, versus waiting for something that is unknown to us. Thank you, Olu. So basically, Olu has experience locally to help and provide advice for investors with different challenges, because every country has their own local challenges when it comes to transferring funds and also showing documentation for that fund, for those funds. So Olu will be able to do that. Now, Olu, you touched on something very interesting and important, which is the wait time, and people having to wait a long time for these applications to be approved. Now, the truth of the matter is that this is completely outside of the regional center control, immigration attorneys control. Is completely on the USCIS side. I mean, they have made a couple of changes that we're hoping are going to improve the wait times, such as they changed from first in, first out processing the applications into let's process the applications for countries that don't have retrogression versus, and approve applications and process them as a visa becomes available for other countries. Nigeria does not have retrogression. A lot of countries around the world don't have retrogression, which can kind of be helpful in terms of the time. But I want to turn this over to Simone really quickly before we can kind of go ahead and turn over to our attendance questions. Simone, do you have anything to say on the wait time? Do you have anything to add there?
Yes. So there are certain countries. So there's a retrogression, meaning there's going to be a wait if you're a certain nationality from a certain country. And right now we're seeing that nationals from China have a very long wait time. So they're, but as far as investors with the nationality from countries in Africa, there is no wait time. So that right now, there's not enough investors that are applying with the EB-5 program, so that their application, once it's approved, they will be right away, they'll be scheduled for an interview at the embassy and be able to get their green card and their immigrant visa to enter the United States.
Correct.
So
I think that the whole question here is the wait time of the processing of that approval.
Oh, the 526, the 526. Okay, got it. Sorry. So right now, that's the very good question. What happens with the 526 processing is that we're seeing processing times that are on the USCIS website. Now, that is not actually accurate because it's really depending on the specific project and the number of whether the project's been approved in the past and the number of investors that have been approved. So if you're a well-established project and with USCIS, they already know for the most part the project and that the project is a sound project. So they're really only looking at the source of funds. So your petition will be processed maybe like half of the time that it really says on the project. So I guess my question is, Q, with your investors, what are the time, because it really is specific to the project, and what are the kind of timelines they're seeing with their investors? So Q, what are you actually seeing with your?
We've been seeing an average of 16 and a half months. Okay.
That's good. So that's in line with the other projects that I work with that are well established. Right. 16 and a half months to 2 years is essentially what we're seeing. Not the long.
Because we had some applications very early on who got approved, quite quickly. And then we had some that went up to 24, 29 months. So the average of the approvals has been like 16 and a half months or so.
Okay, good. So that's why I had to ask you, but to just from an attorney's perspective, you can, and even as an investor, if they're looking at what the current processing times that are published on the USCIS website is not actually accurate, because it really is depending on the project and what kind of approval rates they're seeing with their project, because USCIS is familiar with projects that already have been established, have already had approvals in the system. So then their projects will have sort of kind of like an expedited processing because of the fact of the recognition with the
project has been basically looked at and already approved.
Yes, many times. Some with your project, of course, have had how many approvals in the past, so they don't really need to go through the project side. They're really looking at the source of funds, which is very important, that your source of funds is clearly accounted for, clearly documented, and that's where I come in to make sure that the filing is as clear, concise, and accurate, so that the officers can see it and be able to approve faster. So it's all depending on what your source of funds is. Now they're looking at the source of funds and to make sure that it's accurately and cleanly and concisely outlined. So it makes it their job easier to approve your application faster.
Right.
And so that's kind of the key and that's where our firm comes in to make sure that's all documented. And I work with you to get that done in the most efficient way as possible, but also in the most precise, because I know what the officers have been looking for. I've been doing this for over 15 years now, so we know what gets approved really quickly, and we want to make sure that your application is not in the long processing time, is as efficient as possible.
Great, thank you so much for that, Simone.
Sure.
I think for this, we're going to turn it over to the attendants. If you guys have any questions, we're going to go through the questions now and try to answer them to the best of our abilities.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Q.
Oh, there I am.
Yeah.
I really hope everyone has found this information to be helpful. I do see here in our attendee list some people that we've already met. So I just want to say hi to you, Mr. Imam, Mr. Finos. I see Mr. Matthew, Tadika. Just hello and thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn over to some questions we've had here. Please, I encourage you to ask any questions. Simone and myself here will try to answer them at the best of our abilities. So just write any questions that you might have. I see a question saying, will the recording of this webinar be available as I joined late? Yes, it will be available, and we'll email you with information on how to get access to it. I have another question here from Devika that says, what are the new rules? So I'm not sure if you're talking about the new rules that were established in 2019 or the new rules that are expected in June 30th, but I think we can touch in both of them a little bit. So 2019, the new rules became the investment amount was raised from 500 to 900,000, and also the program the program actually says that there might be a raise periodically in 3 to 5 years to adjust to inflation. And the other rule, the other thing that was important and was passed was the TA designations. So before, the TAs were given by the states. So in whichever state the project was, the state gave the targeted employment area approval. Now they are given by USCIS. Basically, there is specific guidelines. An economist has to follow those guidelines to determine if an area is a TA or not. So these were the two major changes. Another change, I think it happened in March 31st of this year, where USCIS will be processing applications depending on the retrogression of the country, not on a first in, first out basis, which is, I think helpful to many people out there that are non-Chinese. Now, in terms of the regulations that are expected now on June 30th, I think Simone spoke a little bit about that earlier, but Simone, do you want to touch on that a little bit, and on the November 19th, if you have anything to add?
Are you talking about the anticipated change in June 30th? or November 19th.
What is expected?
Yeah, well, there's
the,
a few. Yeah,
the
there's a
question was just what are the new rules? So I'm just trying to kind of cover.
Right. The thing about it is there's a few bills out there right now that's they're proposing once the expiration happens but we're really not sure, to be honest with you, with that certainty. It's not, I mean, there's proposals of legislation, but there isn't anything set right now as far as what the actual rules are, because it has not been extended at this time. So I'm not comfortable with stating a proposed rule, which is not actually the new rule, which was the question.
Right. So I have another question here. It says, what are the maximum, Mr. Luthra, what are the maximum timelines allowed for sending over the funds, and what is the amount which is to be paid upfront out of the $900,000? Mr. Luthra, please contact us. We would love to have this conversation with you. We need to understand a bit more about your situation, and we will work with you through this.
Yes, and just to follow up, as we were mentioning, and also the question right before that said what the minimum investment is required. The minimum investment for EB-5 project with the regional center is 900,000. Just to confirm, but again, to expand on Q's point, which he's just said, if you can't invest that amount right away, immediately, once we can still file with a partial amount, and that partial investment is something that you have to work out specifically with the regional center as to the timeline of when you can actually send the full amount.
Right, absolutely. Another question from Janak. Hi, Janak. It says there is a court case which is on about the possibility of the EB-5 amount reducing back to 500,000. Your views, please. So, Simone, do you want to touch on it, and then I'll give my opinion on it as well.
Sure. I think that it's likely not going to. I don't think it's going to, based on a court case, only because the investment amount was increased because of inflation since 1990. Since the inception of the program, the investment amount has not increased compared to other investment programs around the world. So that was really the basis in which they did increase the amount to 900. Now, whether or not that has impacted the program in a substantial way, which it has, I believe, maybe, but I personally think that you should just count on for now that it's going to be 900,000 instead of waiting for a court case, because we really don't know and how long that will be, if anything. But the investment amount was in the works for years, in terms of them determining to increase it, and they threatened it for years, and they finally finalized the rule in November of 2019. So I just don't think it's going to go lower again. That's my thoughts.
Well, see, there was a court case where the entire case was rested upon the head of Homeland Security back then, the Secretary of Homeland Security back then, being picked, basically being put in the position illegally. And I think that's where the entire thing is going around, where like, okay, Trump gave this position in a non-regular way. Therefore, whatever this person, McAllen, basically has put out there as an EB-5 program is illegal. Therefore, it should go back to what it was at 500,000. I know the current Secretary of Homeland Security came out with a statement right away and said that USCIS stands behind these changes, and we will reinstate these changes right away, no matter, consider them reinstated, basically, no matter what the outcome of that court hearing is. Now, there might, again, you never know. There is possibilities that it might happen. I personally, my professional opinion, it will not. But if it does happen, you are, let's say, you're funded at 900,000, you filed your I-526 petition, your source of funds is in place, would it be hard to bring it back and file for that investor at 500? Simone?
Uh, would it be hard to refile or to?
Yeah, so basically, let's say an investor came in right now with a
Yeah.
$900,000 investment amount. Source of funds is done, and we filed the petition for them. Now,
Right.
there is a window of time where it somehow turns to 500,000. Again, I don't believe it will, but there is a window of time where it turns back to $500,000. What happens? Can we get this investor on that 500 on that window of time? What do we do here?
It's
On
very.
our side, we could work with investors on returning their, excess amount of money. But in terms of filing, though,
I mean, if anything changed with the rules, you could always refile, and you would have to work with the project to discuss how you can get a refund of the excess amount. But I mean, it's a fiction right now. It's not real. We don't know what the rules would say if anything like that should happen. It's never happened before. So it's basically a fiction. I can't comment on what will or what happened, but I do know that you could always refile your application. You could always refile, and projects are willing to, re-execute agreements or have another agreement in place or something to that effect. And you would keep your priority date, because there's a new rule that allows you to keep your priority dates of existing applications. So that's good.
That's great. So basically, if they file today with 900,000, we reach an agreement, let's say, to somehow a window of opportunity comes up. We reach an agreement to, get that money back, the 400,000 back, and go in at 500,000. They would still keep that priority date that they're in, right? And they can just refile with a new rule of 500,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, so there we go. We got a solution to it.
All right. The next question said, and if you don't mind, I'll take that question because they're talking about how long it will take. Jacob Matthews has asked how long will it take duration of fund transfer from India, and the source of funds, what are all the documents required as part of the US process. So worked with many Indian investors. As you know, there's a transfer restriction to transfer a certain amount from India. So normally they have a family member or relative that assists them with that additional amount. They transfer on their behalf, and then that full amount is transferred to the project. As far as how long it will take, it really depends on this all depends on the investors. Like we are here.
If I may interject, Simone, here just a second. We have a structure in place that is FEMA compliant, so you will be in good hands with us. How long it will take, it really just depends. Again, it depends on your particular situation. So just talk to us. We will create a plan for you to get that money here and be FEMA compliant at the same time.
Yes, and that's a great point, Q. Your project is FEMA compliant. As far as the duration of fund transfer, that's something, sometimes there's lags and you're not able to get all the funds in. And particularly right now, we're talking about a very quick turnaround deadline of June 30th to get your file in. But Q and is willing to work with you in terms of if you're not able to get the full investment amount of 900,000. As long as you're able to get a partial investment amount, that should suffice so that we can actually file your application, lock in the priority date. That date that which we file will be used to be able to issue you a visa in the future. So we're able to lock in that priority, get that application filed as soon as possible. So to me, that's the goal. That's ideal if you're able to do that. As far as the source of funds, it all depends where your source of funds is from. Like I can't tell you specifically what are all the documents. For instance, if it's your salary, your salary accumulation, or you earned this money, you have to show bank statements and income tax returns in some cases if you have that. We really work together with you to be as least intrusive, but with all the requirements that I need to get your application approved by USCIS. So it's a conversation I need to have with you, just understand how you earned your fund, where the money is coming from, essentially, whether you received it from a family member or it was a gift, or you earned it as proceeds from real estate or sale of property or whatever it is. I work with you, figure out how best to show your source of funds, and I will provide you with a list of documents that would be required for that wherever the source of funds is coming from. But in any event, we want to make sure that it's easy to understand, clean, so that our officer could, promptly approve it. And that's something that I have a conversation to get the application to that point where it's going to be approved by USCIS.
Absolutely. So, generally speaking, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but generally speaking, I think the source of funds goes back 10 years, right?
Yes. But
So,
sometimes what do you mean goes back 10 years?
So, like, I've heard, for example, in cases of, let's say someone has a home, right, and they're selling it. And then they bought that home like 3-4 years ago. Now they have to prove where they got the money to buy the home as well. Is that correct?
Well, like you said, they wouldn't go past 10 years, but
Right.
I think that, and this is why I was saying, we just want to make it as streamlined and even easier for you, so that so the USCIS is not going to continue to probe where you got the funds. So I have to kind of understand how best to kind of outline that story of the source of funds. And if you purchased a home 3 to 4 years ago, like you said, we probably might need to show how you were able to purchase that, but sometimes. But if it was like you purchased a home 10 years ago, no, that's kind of what,
That's kind of, that goes.
yeah, that's going a little bit too far. But I mean, if it's a problem, if there's an issue with kind of explaining your source of funds, I always will tend to go towards the way that makes it the most simple, the easiest way. The officer won't probe you for more questions. So even if you said, hey, I want to use part of my source of funds is from proceeds from sale of real estate, but there's another way that you could prove your source of funds that might be more easier, I'm going to choose the other one. So it's not necessarily we're going to choose the one, as long as we can prove 900,000, you may have made 2 million. We only need to prove $900,000 of where the money is coming from.
Okay. Mr. Matthew, again, we can have this conversation, absolutely. If you would like to just let us know a little bit more in particular where your funds are coming from and all of that, we can definitely schedule another call together and we can go over all of that. So I'll send you an email with some basic information about source of funds as well as soon as we're done here. Another question from Devika. Do you think the Biden administration would be more favorable? I'm gonna talk first. Sorry. I do. I really do believe the Biden administration will be more favorable to immigration just in general than the previous administration. I think it serves to mention that the head of Homeland Security is not a US born citizen. He's a neutralized Cuban citizen, right? So that kind of goes to show just the level of acceptance this administration has towards immigrants versus the past administration. So I do believe that it will be more favorable. Simone, what do you believe?
Yes, thank you. Q. Yes, absolutely. More favorable towards immigration and immigration applications, including the EB-5 program. We're already seeing changes within the administration at USCIS, at Department of Homeland Security. They appointed at the head of Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, who has been under the Obama administration, is favorable towards immigration. So we're going to see a more kinder and gentler protocol and policy toward immigration in general. And the U.S. is open. I mean, it's a land of immigrants, and they're going to continue to improve upon these policies that may have been more restrictive in the past. Obviously, President Biden has already overturned or didn't extend a lot of the anti-immigration policies that were in place under Donald Trump. And so we will continue to see that. So we're anticipating great things in the next few years, and hope you will be able to take advantage of this EB-5 program as in this current form before June 30th. I'm actually gonna answer Mr. Imam's question from Bangladesh.
Well, Mr. Imam and I spoke before.
Okay.
He says that he is from Bangladesh, and Bangladesh has restriction to send money overseas. What to do then? There's two things I'm going to say before I turn it over to you, Simone. First, Mr. Imam, nice to see you here. Second, we are looking at your case. I am going to contact you to speak in more details about your particular situation. We do deal with people who are from different countries who have restrictions in place, and we can help you in terms of giving you ideas of what we have seen other investors do before. But I think Simone can talk to you a little bit, now that she's here, she can talk to you a little bit more about the actual requirements or what you might be able to do. Please, Simone, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I've worked with many investors from Bangladesh, actually. And in terms of what they've done, some have used relatives in the United States to help them transfer the funds. Some have used other accounts in other countries, such as Malaysia, to get the funds transferred. We're an intermediary in Malaysia. So there are ways in which we can get the funds. If you have the funds in Bangladesh, there's restrictions. There are different methods and individuals and entities that we've worked with in the past that we could help you to get that money over to the United States.
Absolutely. And again, Mr. Imam, this is really a teamwork. It's got to be done between you, your attorney, and us. So I'm going to contact you directly, and we can schedule another call with you and Simone as well here, and then we can talk about your particular situation and kind of just go over your current situation and see how we can help you. Okay?
Yes.
Do we have?
We have obviously a few questions in terms of how can a local agent help them process an application with Olu? Perhaps because it seems like a lot of source of funds are the main topic here. And how can a local agents, because they're actually on the ground level, and what they can do to help make a successful application.
Before I let Olu speak, I'm just going to add one thing here about the local agents. They are extremely helpful when it comes to source of funds. And let me tell you why. We can go back on our experience in terms of what has happened with a particular investor before, right? So I can tell you, oh, I've had this experience when, like, let's say someone owned a house for generations, but didn't have the paperwork for it. And it was solved this way, or whatever the case may be. But I won't know country specifics. And the local agent, such as Olu, will know the specifics of that country and how you can actually procure that documentation. So they are extremely helpful just in general, but I'm going to let Olu here kind of talk to you in details about the help that you can get from him in terms of source of funds documentation. Please, Olu.
Thank you very much, Queen, for this opportunity. I'm sorry I won't be able to open the video, but at least what is needed is what we can actually achieve. The local source of funding is sometimes very tricky and is one of the most extensive work you need to do when you're doing EB-5, because sometimes the documentations are not very they don't get these documentations done as they move on. So what we do is when we come in, we help you to do all these documentations, get into the necessary offices to get it done on time, instead of you wasting your time trying to get all these documents together. So we will dedicate our time to going to the necessary institution to get these documentations from you, get it signed by you and return it back to them, which makes things easier for you. And at the end of the day, we know what the attorneys are looking for.
So we help you gather it before the attorneys ask. And when you are submitting your documentations to the attorney, it makes it even easier for the attorney to get things done quickly. So the local agents, like I normally say in all forums, cannot be neglected. They are very, very important. What else? What other question did you ask, Sam?
Sorry? Olu, I couldn't hear you this last sentence that you said. I'm sorry.
I said, what was the other question?
I don't know. I think Sam is seeing those questions. I don't see those particular ones because they're logged into the webinar with different codes. Sam?
Yeah, so a lot of people are pretty much asking about the source of funds as well as, the investment level. Is it potentially will go down? I think we've covered a lot of that elements. In terms of, I guess, with this webinar, what we're trying to focus on, how can people lock it in? What can be done to lock it in at that amount, obviously with the reauthorization? Because realistic, how long would it take in terms of getting the source of funds? And Simone, how long do you work with the clients in order to make sure everything's pretty much all in place to make a petition? Do you want to roughly give us an estimation?
All right, so in terms of how long it takes to kind of get the source of funds in order, it's hard to put a direct, but I mean, let's put it this way, we can get it done in 4 weeks, less than 4 weeks, only because it all depends on whether there's challenges such as transferring the money out of their countries, because that is always a challenge we have to work with them. But I would say 3 to 4 weeks at most to get that in order. That's on really their side. For us to finalize the application, as I mentioned, 1 to 2 weeks once we get everything back from them. It could be as little as 2 weeks. I mean, it is a substantial amount of money. Again, if they're not transferring the full amount to the project, that also maybe decreases the time a little bit. But it's really as short or as long as the investor needs, the time that he needs to get his documents in order, because again, we have to supply certain documents to USCIS to make sure that they understand how they earn the funds and the source of funds. If that makes sense, I hope they answer the question.
Sorry,
Sam.
I just want to say we're obviously trying to, because we got this deadline for the reauthorization end of June, 30th of June. Yes. Now, are people going to freak out thinking, I don't have that 4 to 5 weeks, or how can they speed up the process? Because, I know like the people that are on this webinar, seems like we have a lot of people from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Africa, etc. Now, are they freaking out? It's going to take a long time, 3-4 weeks, or it's much easier? Is it, because you mentioned the moving the money out. How can they lock it in so they don't miss out in that reauthorization?
Okay, well, that's a great question. How they lock it in is investing a partial amount. And, like for instance, if they have an issue with transferring the full 900,000, but they could transfer a percentage of that funds. And again, according to Q's policy and working out with the investor, as long as we get something substantial into the project prior to the June 30th deadline, we will be able to file the application.
So Simone, just so we know the investment is at 900,000. Yes. If someone locks it in at say 400 or 500,000 now, yes, and they negotiate with the regional center, which Q's dealing with, so they still fall under the 900,000 and they still are eligible before the reauthorization.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they can invest 400,000, get that in by the 30th, and not by the 30th, let's say, because we need to still file it. So we would like to get it in no later than a week before the 30th deadline so that we can get everything prepared and filed. We don't want to really leave it to the very, very end stage.
Okay.
So I would say, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks tops, try to get everything in. But if they do get a partial amount, like minimum 400,000 or something to that, or whatever they can according to working it out with an EB-5 regional center project such as Q's, talking to Q and get some type of partial investment amount in the project, we can file their application.
Okay, so Q, how would the regional center play a role on this? Because obviously the partial payments is coming to the regional center. What role would you play on this?
Right, we would have to have an agreement with the investor in terms of the timeline to send in the total amount of the money, the entire $900,000. We would have to put that in place. We would have to create a securities note for the rest of the money so that we can send it to Simone so that she can have, she can attach that to the filing, and we will accept that partial investment, and we will say that the investor is in the process of investing. So you would get that statement from us as well. But we would have to work on a timeline in terms of sending the entire funds in. Again, it also depends on the project. If a project is at the end of life cycle where we're looking to close that project, that offering, we might not have that much time because other investors would come in with a full amount and we want to close the offering. If the project is still, in the fundraising period, it won't be a problem at all. So it really just depends on a situation. It's not something that we can say, okay, this is what it is for everyone. It depends on the investor. It depends on their particular situation. So that's what our role is, basically working out a plan with them to fund the entire amount.
Okay. So just to reiterate with the audience, where would that money, is that locked into an escrow account? Where does that fund go to?
Correct. It goes into the escrow account, of the project that you have picked. And it stays there. It goes into the escrow account, and then you can send in your money as you go until you reach the 900 at the same place.
Okay. So we have a question. It's an anonymous question. It's they believe that it can be done after the 30th. Maybe they're not so yet convinced that why they should do it before the 30th. Do you want to just reiterate, and from a legal standpoint, Simone, why this is a good idea now before the 30th?
Yeah, because the EB-5 Regional Center program is set to expire on June 30th. So unless they extend it through another legislative bill, which they're working on, or through another, or just decide to again extend it, but it's definitely terminating as of June 30th. We are anticipating that it will be extended. That's why over here we're not too concerned. But that being said, the program as it stands is under a set of rules which we are very familiar with, which is favorable to investors. And that's why we think it's best, if you are interested in this, very interested in this program, if this is something that you really want to do and you have the funds, we would recommend that you do it before the 30th deadline.
Okay, so Simone and Q, say for example, if an investor locks it in now and it doesn't get reauthorized, worst scenario, it doesn't get authorized, what would be your stance on that?
First, I believe that once you're in, you're in. No one's going to go back and tell you, oh, I'm sorry, you applied a week ago, but now there is no more EB-5, because that would create a havoc. Like, do you know how many applications are out there still processing? You would apply to all of them. So once you file the I-526, you're in. But let's talk about a unrealistic somehow event where it does happen and they tell you, you know what, no longer can do EB-5, although you filed, which is again, very, 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 very unlikely. We will refund all your funds, absolutely everything, admin fee, everything, if that happens, in less than 30 days, if that happens again. But even if in the event that something changes or you're required to do something else, or you don't want to, or it doesn't work for you any longer, or it's just not convenient for you any longer, even in that case, we will refund all of your money. So that is our regional center stand on this issue? Simone, please, what do you think?
So yeah, I think it's highly unlikely. It has never happened before, where you know, a program normally, if it does expire, the rules change. And you get your application before that sunset date. It locks in the pre-existing applications. And so that's what I've seen from just track record with different agencies and USCIS included. That being said, we will also offer a partial refund. We're doing the legal work for you, so the time is involved. We're not as like you, but we, you know, just because of our confidence that it's going to be fine. Either way, we'll offer some type of refund as well.
So is there any incentives that you're offering the viewers today?
If you are able to make a decision within, I guess, to get this application before the June 30th deadline, we're offering a discount of percentage of our legal fees discount. Again, we'll have to talk about legal fees and specifics depending on your application, but we're offering a discount right now for anybody who is able. I think Q, I'm sorry, I did want to coordinate with you in terms of the timeline for people to get in there. Are you doing it with within a week or two, or just the June 30th?
Right. Basically, in our cases, you get in before June 30th of
That's what I thought. Yeah.
This year. The thing is, the source of funds has to start earlier. You can send the money in the day before. It doesn't make a huge difference as much as it makes having your source of funds ready and having your application ready. So in terms of that, then Simone's timelines are going to be much shorter than mine because she needs to start working on your application right away, which is much more extensive, basically.
Yeah, so as I said, no later than 2 weeks from now, which would be the 12th of June, no later. You would have to contact me within 1 week from now, and then no later. I'm counting off the 12th to receive the discount. I would probably make it the 7th just to be sure. June 7th would be my deadline for offering this discount, because after June 7th, I consider this an expedited petition.
Right.
And that's actually an increased amount, not a discount of my legal fees, but an increased amount. Right. So if you don't contact us by June 7th with definitive desire to engage, then that discount no longer applies. But of course, I'm still happy to work with you after that, but it's going to be super, super tight.
Right.
Yeah, I guess we're being a bit cautious because we don't know the amount of work, Simone, on per application, because it could be a very complicated process or it could be a very simple process.
Correct.
If someone's got a very simple process, then of course you know, the billing hours are reduced. So that's why I think Simone's just going to do it on a case-by-case basis. We have another question. I don't know if you've answered that. It's basically, do we have to pay all the money up front at 900,000?
I think I've answered that.
You've answered that.
Yeah. Yes, you've answered that.
Okay. Retrogression, again, question from Devika. What is the waiting period for China compared to India and Africa? What is the current waiting period for, you know, countries that are expected to be in retrogression?
China
that are not. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
The question is basically, what are the waiting times for China compared to India and Africa?
Yeah.
The USCIS releases a visa bulletin every year, and it shows where the priority dates are for each country that they're processing applications for. So if you go to China, I believe it's like back, let me just check it in 1 second. I believe it's quite far away. We're talking about 10 years minimum for you to get a visa, not the approval. The initial approval has nothing to do with that. You get approved, you then have to wait. If you're a Chinese national, you have to wait for that visa to become available for you. And that visa doesn't become available for up to 10 years. They are really behind on those. But if you look at India and the other countries, it shows as current. So they are processing applications currently. So it doesn't have an indication to be retrogression in these other countries. So that's what I have to say. I don't know, Simone, if you want to add to that.
No, that's you basically, yeah. I would say agree with Q on the retrogression. So I understand many, the investors, I don't think there are any investors from China on that are listening right now.
No,
So
there
if you're
aren't.
not from China, you're going to be fine.
Exactly. If you are from China, you'll be fine. If you're not from China, sorry, you'll be fine. It doesn't really show to have any retrogression anywhere else. Again, these things can change. If there's a surge in applications, it could change. But as of right now, the processing are the USCIS is processing of I-526s from India and Africa are current.
Yes.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Devika, there will be no cancellation. Hopefully no cancellation of EB-5. I don't think it will happen. Again, the world is full of surprises, but the chances are extremely low for the cancellation to happen. I think we're going to have a reauthorization, a permanent one. That's what I believe. There is going to be changes, but I don't think the program is going to be canceled. It could be delayed, it could be changed, it could be many things, but our opinion here, we don't think it will be canceled. Right,
I think, yeah, I think Q and Simone, whenever you get a new administration in power, they always want to make improvements to a successful program. So, so what they're doing is obviously they need a bit of time to make some changes. So it just, the regional centers like yourself that's been around for a very long time, who have a good track record, they're the ones that can actually, make adjustments to these changes. So it's actually good in a way, because it's just a case of making some changes, making sure that the organizations that are around that are USCIS approved have made those changes, and they're under more scrutiny. So it just protects more investors. So any changes is actually for the benefits of the investors.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're just hoping that there won't be too much requirements or added requirements on the investors' side of the story. That's all.
There typically has been, when there's discussions about changing the legislation, that they're looking for stricter requirements and more requirements from the investor side. And so that's why we are concerned or are trying to really push filing your application before these other requirements are put in place. Because the more harder it is to kind of file and prove the evidence source of funds, or to limiting your source of funds, like it can't be from a gift or something to that effect. We just, because we understand this program has been in existence for quite some time, we really do understand what the requirements are as they exist right now. If they should change, they will tend to get a little bit stricter on the regional center and the investors. So that's why we're recommending.
Right. All right. I think we don't have any more questions pending, right? I don't see anything. Sam, do you have anything?
I don't know. Olu, would you like to say anything? It's just basically, I'm just thinking, since the pandemic, if people really started making movements on this program, because now me and Q speak to a lot of investors and they're like, we want to get out now. Well, if you started this 12 months ago, when we were in conversations with you, you could probably be in the US in a few months' time frame. So, what more acts do you need in order to motivate you to get going? This is what's, we've had 12 months of conversation. We've seen how the situations are, unfortunately, in certain countries, and it's well publicized. What more do you need?
Sincerely, if I'm to really divulge the information, it's the fact that clients are asking, have you been to the project site before? You know, we didn't have that kind of question that much when it was 500. Now that is 900, they are kind of more kind of conscious that, wow, 900, have you been there before?
Right.
You know, so that's one challenge that I have. But I know in the end, very soon, I'll try and get something done about that.
There's another question, Mr. Finos. He's asking if for an Indian, is it required to transfer funds from India or can be from the country you reside? Yes, you could transfer the funds from anywhere in the world, as long as we can prove where that money is coming from, the source of those funds. So there's not a limit as to where you could be residing in India and transferring the funds from somewhere else. We just have to provide how it came into the U.S. and where it's from, the source of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perhaps you need another meeting with Mr. Finos on the process of source of funds. So.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Finos, I'll send you a message. Let's see if you want to maybe have a conversation with Simone and talk to her about your situation, and then we'll take it from there. So I'll definitely send a message to you privately, and we'll talk about it.
Yes, we're happy to really talk to you, kind of work out the best strategy, how we can get your funds into the U.S., the most, easier and efficient, streamlined process, and something that's clear for USCIS to understand and get that all done in the timeline in which we mentioned. So you have to get to us, you got to get in touch with us as soon as possible, though, because again, sometimes, a lot of the times, you think one way and then we might suggest another way, and then things take a lot longer than anticipated. So please do, if you do have an interest, do not wait. Talk to us sooner rather than later.
So I'll actually give an example. We've actually had a Lebanese investor who, there's restrictions now on the amount they can take out. They're actually allowed daily limit of nearly only $30 or less on a daily basis. So those are the restrictions certain governments are imposing on certain investors. Now, if they started moving their money, when it was much more flexible, then they wouldn't have had that difficulty. So we're seeing a lot of political uncertainties in a number of countries. And so it's actually, you couldn't ask for a better situation where the regional center is giving you that, reassurance on back of refunds. And then, of course, Simone's giving a discount to start the process. So it's a team effort here, and everyone's trying to work here as a team to make sure it's successfully done in a correct manner.
Absolutely.
I think that's about it.
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
There isn't really much else to discuss as per this topic. I want to thank everyone who has attended. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I will contact some of you, as I promised during the webinar. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And please feel free to contact us with any questions that you may have. Simone?
Yes, thank you again for joining us. We remain at your disposal for any questions, comments, issues. We really want to help you here to take advantage of this incredible program as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate this session.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, panelists. And of course, everyone has Q's WhatsApp number, or you're probably in a group. You can always send her a message, and also we can get Simone involved just for any clarification. And of course, we have Olu as well. So I know the best form of communications for the visitors here or the viewers here is through WhatsApp, and you have the direct access anyway. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.